Hello, my name is David Strov, and today I want to introduce you my topic of theory of justice by John Rawls. And I want to ask and answer the question why Rawls matter today. So to begin with, imagine for a moment that you're about to be born, but you have no idea who you will be. You don't know if you will be born into wealth or poverty, whether you'll be healthy or have a disability, or even what your race or gender will be. If you were tasked with designing the rules of society from this position of total uncertainty, what would those rules look like? So this is the central question posed by John Rawls in his book in 1971, A Theory of Justice. Today we're moving beyond simple definitions of right and wrong to explore Rawls' vision of justice as fairness. My goal is to show that when we strip away our personal biases, we find that justice isn't just about individual success, it's about a collective responsibility to the most vulnerable among us. To understand Rawls, we have to understand what he was fighting against. In the mid-20th century, the dominant moral theory was utilitarianism. What is it? It is the idea that society should always aim for the greatest good for the greatest number. While that sounds logical on the surface, Rawls saw a dangerous flaw. Utilitarianism allows for the rights of minority to be sacrificed if it benefits the majority. So Rawls saw it as a dangerous flaw. And Rawls is a Harvard professor who lived through the upheaval of the 20th century, argued that justice must be the first virtue of social institutions. So it's just as a scientific theory must be rejected if it is untrue, a law or institution must be abolished if it's unjust, regardless of how much aggregate happiness it produces. So how do we find these just laws? Rawls introduces a thought experiment called the original position. He asks us to step behind the veil of ignorance. So behind this veil, you're effectively blinded to your own identity. You don't know your social status, your class, or your national assets, I don't know, like intelligence or strength. This is more than just a philosophical trip. It is a radical test of empathy. From this position, Rawls argues that any rational person would be cautious. Why? So you wouldn't choose a slave-based economy because you might be the slave. Or you wouldn't choose a cutthroat capitalist system because you might be born with illness that prevents you from working. So behind this veil, fairness becomes like a matter of self-preservation. So from this original position, Rawls argues we would agree on two fundamental principles. The first is the equal liberty principle. So what is it? This states that every person has an absolute equal rights to the most extensive system of basic liberties. It could be freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and the right to vote. Rawls makes these liberties lexically prior, which is a fancy way of saying they are non-negotiable. You cannot trade away someone's right to speak or vote just because it might improve the economy. So in Rawlsian society, your basic dignity is the floor that no policy is allowed to break through. But Rawls isn't a dreamer. He knows people are identical and those inequalities are inevitable. This brings us to the difference principle. Another one. He argues that social and economic inequalities are only justified if they result in compensating benefits for the least advantaged members of society. So think of it in this way. Rawls doesn't care if a CEO makes millions of dollars, provided that the system that allows the CEO to get rich also ensures that the janitor has better healthcare and higher standards of living than they would in a perfect equal society, which is logical. It's not about making everyone the same. It's about making sure inequality works for everyone, not just for the people at the top. So now I want to go to my critical analysis of this theory. So why should we accept the difference principle? So most of us are raised to believe in merit, that if you work hard and use your talents, you deserve everything you get. So Rawls challenges this head-on by calling our talents a natural lottery. Why a natural lottery? You didn't earn your high IQ or your athletic ability, or the fact you are born with in supportive home where you have everything you need, you have bread on the table, and you have something to drink, right? So those were gifts of luck. Therefore, the wealth you generate using these lucky gifts doesn't belong solely to you. It is a social asset. My position is that Rawls and justice is effectively an insurance policy against the luck of our birth. It moves us away from the myth of the self-made man and toward the recognition of our deep social debts to one another. So, of course, not everyone agrees. For example, Robert Nozick, a contemporary of Rawls, argued that this is actually a violation of liberty. Why? He famously claimed that taxing a person's hard-earned wealth to help others is a form of forced labor. Why? So, for example, if you work 40 hours a week and the government takes 10 hours of worth of your pay, they're effectively forcing you to work for someone else for free. So other critics argue that if we focus too much on the least advantaged, we might destroy the very incentives that make people want to innovate, create businesses, or solve problems in the first place, right? So in evaluating these critics, I believe that Rawls actually provides the middle path. Why? He isn't calling for a flat, stagnant society. By allowing for some inequality, he keeps the incentives alive. The difference is that he turns those incentives into a tool for social good. A surgeon gets paid more not just because they are important, but because paying them more ensures we have enough surgeons to help the poor. Rawls' theory is more robust than Nozick's because it recognizes that no one succeeds in a vacuum. You cannot be a successful billionaire without public roads, a legal system to protect your contracts, an educational workforce, right? You cannot build a business without educated people working for you. So all of which are basically funded by the collective. So how does this apply to our world today? So consider the rise of artificial intelligence. If we were behind the wheel of ignorance right now, would we allow AI to automate away millions of jobs without a safety net? Probably not. I wouldn't do it because you could be the one whose career disappears tomorrow, right? We can also apply this to, for example, climate change. Rawls argues for justice between generations. How is it? So since we don't know when will we be born, it is unjust for our generation to use up all Earth's resources and leave dying planet for the next generation. From this a Rawlsian perspective, sustainability is a requirement of justice, not just an option. So to conclude everything I said, John Rawls, A Theory of Justice, asks us to look in the mirror and be honest. If you wouldn't be happy to be born into our current society as its poorest member, then our society is by definition unjust. While Rawls gives us a brilliant blueprint for a fairer world, he leaves us with a difficult question: how do we convince those who have already won the birth lottery to be, for example, a son of Elon Musk, right? So can we give up their advantages for the sake of the collective? Justice as fairness is a beautiful ideal, but the path to achieving it requires us to look past our interests and acknowledge that we are all, in one way or another, just lucky to be here. So this is all what I want to talk about today. Thank you very much for listening to me, and have a great day.